So what is an option contract? Is basically the ability to invest that $1,000 and control that $50,000 property. These kinds of strategies are very important because you can't save your way into wealth. Inflation is eating away at all of your savings. You know, we talked about the price. We talked about all of the natural disaster, all the wars, all the conflict. We talked about the US dollar being extremely strong, but it's getting attacked by all of these scenarios. But in spite of all of these things, we live in an age of technology where there's not a better time for you to create wealth, thanks to YouTube, Google, and all these things. I remember when I first was learning about these things, I had to like go to the public library and borrow books and read it. Today, I can just literally Google what an option contract is, and Google will give me not only the answer, but also refer me to the best books, the highest rated books, and etc. You know, I don't know what philosophers said, and I believe this to be true. Wealth is created when there's chaos on the street, right? I think it's Warren Buffett. An analogy that he uses is that you want to buy when there's fear, but you want to sell when there's greed, right? Same kind of concept. The reason why I'm a big fan of real estate is because real estate is, you know, depending on whether you're religious or not, it's something that at least humans have not been able to create and duplicate and things of that nature. So we have a set amount, something similar to Bitcoin. There's only so much that can be created, but real earth is something that we actually live on, need, and things of that nature. And we have a set amount of it. We can't produce anymore. It's vital, critical to our survival, and it has a historic of hedging the inflation. So as things get more expensive, so does real estate. As money loses value, real estate gains value. I've experience investing in all sorts of properties, and I encourage people to do the same. Obviously, there are pitfalls depending on what you invest, but typically real estate is a safe investment, right? And if the whole real estate investment thing is not an option, you can, of course, invest in real estate investment trusts that have low risk. You can do wholesaling option, and that's what we're going to talk about today. You can do buy, fix, and flips. You can do buy and hold, and many different strategies are out there to invest in real estate. And most people, the thing that stops them about investing in real estate is that, you know, 61% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. And this strategy is the reason why we're passionate about it, is because you don't need a heavy capital to do this particular strategy. That you don't need credit, and most people's credits are bad or limited. And it doesn't take a lot of time. I mean, there are some strategies that you need to apply, but it doesn't take quite a bit of time. And of course, it doesn't require a great deal of education. So what are options? Options, in simple terms, is a contract between a buyer and a seller, where the buyer enters into a right, but not an obligation, to buy something at a time specified in the future and at a price specified in the future. But the seller enters into an obligation to sell something in the future if the buyer exercises his or her right to buy it. That's a very long definition. An option is basically layaway. I go and I put a deposit on a property, and I tell the seller I'll be back 90 days, 120 days to buy the property at that time. We put the contract on piece of paper. We agree and we sign a piece of paper, and I put a deposit. The deposit is not what's important. The deposit is important, but the dollar amount is irrelevant. What is relevant is that for good or valuable consideration, the other party has to see value in what it is that you're putting up as a guarantee. So technically, you can enter into a contract without putting any money down if you don't have any money. You could put up a car as a collateral, as a guarantee. You can put up anything that the other person sees as value. You could put up services, for instance, right? We human came from the system of bartering. So you could put up a service to buy a property in the future. But the concept of an option is I, the buyer, get into a right, not an obligation, and the seller gets into an obligation. So if I come to the seller, when the time is due, when it is time to exercise, he has an obligation. What that means, he can't sell the property to anybody else for as long as my contract is valid. That's what an option is. Now, this is not where you make the money. You make the money by exchanging or transferring or conveying or selling the contract you entered into, right? Many people do not have and never have intentions of closing on the option contract. So even if I'm doing a stock option, the idea is not let the contract expire. It's not, the idea is not to be forced to buy the property. Therefore, your deposit should be as little as possible if you can negotiate it that way. Now, obviously, the more expensive the property, the bigger the deposit the seller is going to ask. But there are ways you can negotiate that. All right. So an option, again, is the right, not the obligation, to enter into a contract and buy something in the future at today's price. All right. So when you understand that concept, it's extremely powerful. If you enter into a contract for 6 months and the real estate market collapses greater than your deposit, then the wise thing would be to do what? What do you think the wise thing would be to do? You guys want to tell me while I look at one of these things? That's right. The wise thing would be to back out, right? To get out of that contract. The wise thing would be, if I put $1,000 and the real estate market collapsed by 10 grand, 20 grand, it would be foolish for me to buy that property. I would just prefer letting my $1,000 go away. And then go back, if I really want the property, go back and make another contract. The seller, I'm sure, would not mind taking that $1,000 deposit from you. But then when he realized that the market has changed, the dynamic has shifted, he will sell you the property at a fair price, because you will make the condition, the contingency, that they're appraised for what you're asking for, right? So why the hell would a seller do this? Well, under normal circumstances, the seller enter into a contract because he does not have a buyer at hand, and this is a potential profit margin where he could lock in a buyer, or he could lock in some sort of money that you have put up as a deposit or as a security. Now, all of this is not a guarantee or a promise that you will make money. So you have to understand that you can enter into an option contract and lose money. That means that you have seen a change in the market, or you have not been able to find a buyer for your contract. So I'm hoping that the deposit that you've put down is so small that it is insignificant compared to the overall picture of your goal is. So if your goal is to do 10 option contracts in 12 months, losing 5 deals should not break your bank, because the other 5 deals, the risk to reward ratio are greater than 1:4 or 1:10 or something like that. What that means is that if I lose 5 contracts at $1,000, 1 deal should make up for that $1,000 loss per 5. Then if I do 2 deals successfully, my profit margin are greater than the 5 losses, right? So this is a disclaimer. This is not me telling you to go do this. It is not me telling you that you're going to make a profit. Past performance is not indicative of future results. And our option is an investment strategy that could lead to losses. You need to acknowledge that. This is for educational purposes only and not financial advice. I'm not an attorney. I'm not an accountant. I'm not a CPA, none of that stuff. This is for educational purposes, because we are a licensed real estate school in Massachusetts that teach these kinds of things, but we don't make the promise that it will make you profit. Okay. So just want to make sure we are on the same page. So who is this for? This is typically for people that don't have or don't want to pay a 20 or 25% down on an investment property. people that are busy and they don't want to do rehabs, or they are not very educated on the real estate aspect of things, so they are comfortable with a small deposit on fix and flips. On assigning contracts to other people, or if they're inexperienced, or if they're tired of investing in REITs and things of that nature because the return is just not that attractive. So wholesaling, where do you use options? Where you do wholesaling. So you enter into a contract with a person, and then you take that contract and you flip it to an end user, or to a fix and flipper or someone like that. And then you collect the margin or the spread between your contract and the price, right? Now you can also do what is called a lease option. Now I want to point out that the lease option is completely different from a wholesale. A lease option is where I rent the property and part of my rent goes towards the down payment of the acquisition of the property, right? So that's what a lease option is. So the benefits to the buyer is that typically, if you negotiate it correctly and you've put a low enough down payment, it's low risk. You can walk away from the transaction when it doesn't make sense. You can lock in a fixed price for a relatively long period of time. That could be 90 days, that could be 60 days, 120 days, whatever. And you control the value of something much bigger compared to how much you're putting down. Let me give you an example of that, because that is incredibly important and powerful. If I enter into a contract to buy your property that you're selling for $1 million, and I enter into that contract to control that property for 6 months, and I put up a $5,000 deposit. If the average real estate market goes up by 7%, that's what it has done in the previous 2 years, or the average is 3 years. Let's use, the average 3%. So let's use the average. Let's say you're buying a property for $1 million and the average real estate market is 3%. 3% of $1 million, how much is that? But since you have kept the property for half a year, 1.5%. That's a lot of money compared to your deposit, right? And that's the trick of it. You have to be able to transfer the property to someone else. Or even if you ended up buying it, you would have still made 1.5% growth while someone else is carrying the mortgage, doing all the things that they're doing to that particular property, because all you've lost or all you've put up is that deposit. So you control an asset that's much larger for a period of time while someone else is caring for it. All right. And you can flip this property to investors and you can build equity while you're controlling that asset, whether that be on the option or whether that be on a buy to rent. The benefit to the seller, though, is that they have locked in a buyer, or at least they've locked in a deposit, right? They maintain ownership while the option is being exercised and there's consideration to be paid. Now, here's the negative thing for the seller is that if the market goes up, the seller cannot take upside profit on that. But if the market goes down and it goes down equal to the deposit, even if you back out, the seller gets to keep that deposit and looks for a new buyer on that same exact property. So he still sells it at the higher premium 6 months back, if that makes sense. And of course, there are tax implications. The tax does not take place until the transaction is taking place, which is in the future, right? So how does wholesaling work? So you put a property under contract, find an investors, and there are many ways and strategies out there online, and we can give you guys some courses on how to find investors, but you find an investor. And then you get the investors to pull the trigger on your property. And when they do that, they need to do that at a premium because you worked hard to find that deal. And this is what it would look like. So if you bought a property for 750 grand, you put $1,000, you find a buyer that's going to buy it for 765. You get your $1,000 back plus the 15 grand, because all the seller has to do now is sell it to the new buyer, and all the buyer has to do is close on the price that he agreed with you, but with the original seller. And typically the simplest way to do this is sign a purchase and sales contract and have that purchase and sales contract be equal to the spread and be made payable to you, so that if the new seller I'm sorry, if the new buyer backs out, he loses that purchase and sales contract. But if you back out, you lose your $1,000 deposit, but you still made a profit if you've written a contract that's solid and enforced within a court of law. All right. So literally, if you do this in 90 days, you could do a 16x on your property. And this is what the numbers reflect. Purchase price is $750, consideration is $1,000. Your balance due of $749 to the seller in 90 days. You find that someone that can close this in 30 days at $765. The balance is still due $749. You get the spread. You get the middle portion. All right. So if you do enough of these deals, the average income in the US is $60,000 to $70,000. All you need to do is 5 of these deals and you've replaced your income. All right. A lease option is something completely different, where you take property that you rent out and make sure that you have certain rights within the lease that allows you to flip the lease or to transfer anything of that nature. And then all of or part of your rent goes to pay the down payment of the property. Over a period of time, you've accumulated a good down payment, so when you're refinancing it, you don't need to come up money out of your pocket. Benefit to the seller is that he no longer has to worry about the maintenance and day-to-day operation of that particular property. Just collects the rent until he gets the closing date, big lump sum. So you build your own equity by having a portion of your rent, and at any time at the end of the term, you can exercise your contract or you can assign it to someone else. So it works similar to this, where you have a purchase price of $300,000, consideration of $1,000, balance is $299. The purchase of your rent over a period of time, say it's $30,000 on a monthly basis, broken down into monthly basis. So then your balance due to the sales is $269. You've accumulated the appreciation, but you've accumulated the appreciation in several ways. You've accumulated the appreciation because property goes up, but you've also accumulated because you've paid down the sales price over a period of time, right? And a lot of time you can negotiate these things. If the homeowner owned that home free and clear, you can negotiate this without even having to worry about interest rate. So all this craziness that's happening with the interest rate going up, the Federal Reserve just yesterday or 2 days ago increased it by another 0.5 point. If you're doing a lease to own, you can completely ignore this. It does not impact you. It only impacts you when you find the time to get the mortgage on it 2, 3, 4 years from now in the future, right? And that's the benefit and advantage of a lease of option. I mean, with a lease or even with an option, with a lease to own or on an option. So you have the right to assign it, you have the right to extend it, you have the right to sublease it, you have the right tools and all these kinds of things. Now, we do have some kits that are available that we can offer to our customers. I know that, for instance, me, when I started out, before we started using our own, we used companies like LegalZoom and all these, or we hired our own attorney to put these contracts together. And our attorney is about $250 to $300 per hour. And they do that per transaction. Here's the issue though. If we are going to do 5 of these, an attorney is hired every single time to put these fill in the blank template kind of scenario, it adds up incredibly quickly. Now, this is not me telling you not to use an attorney. I would never advise someone not to use an attorney. Attorney is a great asset to a team, but they can get expensive. We do have kits that we're selling that you can buy, take advantage of, present it to your attorney. Maybe he'll reduce the cost because you're bringing in templates. And these things cost us a lot of money, but you're welcome to jump on it if you're interested. So for example, an assignment, assumption contract typically costs $97 that you can buy on our website. We have the attorney's approved forms that you can use in the contract also. that typically costs $47. And we have the letter of intent. An intent letter is a letter that you're using to demonstrate that you're interested in purchasing the particular property that we also have used in the past, that have been vetted by our counsel. And we have, of course, the option to purchase of real estate, the option contract to purchase of real estate that we've used in the past. And all of these form are very simple, easy to follow, fill in the blank kind of questions with space for you to add clause in there that gives additional protection either to you or to the seller of the property. And we have the real estate purchase and sales contract, right? Real estate purchase and sales contract are typically something that a real estate agent that has the broker's license can put together, or they can refer you to an attorney. And I know, for instance, the attorneys that we typically use charge $500 to $1,000 to put together a purchase and sales contract that we can also provide to you. Now, if anything, even if you are using an attorney, the cool thing about these contracts is you can have them and then compare to what your attorney is using. And if you find clause protections in this that is not in your contract, at least it gives you a reason to have a conversation about it, right? And then we have the real estate sales contract, the lease options. This is again a lease agreement with the option to buy at the end of it. And then you can do this all by yourself with an attorney, or you can do it with some of our kit. And our kit at the moment, all of it is $17, right? So if you go to the link on the bottom, wmoney.bostonwealth.institute, opt for the option kit, you'll be able to get this kit, download it, and then use it for your business. All right. So forgive the screen. Make sure that you have /options-kit, KIT, and you'll be able to purchase this option for $17. All right. Now, again, this is not supposed to be a suggestion for me to tell you that you don't need an attorney or an accountant or CPA or anything like that. This is not what this is. I am not telling you that you don't need those people. As a matter of fact, I encourage you to have those people. Having this kit is an added protection, an added benefit for you to have, or gives you an opportunity to compare, or at least have questions or recommend suggestions, things of that nature, to your attorney to make sure that he has these kinds of clauses inside of the system. Again, these things adds up to about $900. Adds up to $900. All right. So each one of these, even if you go to Staples and you go to the shelf, each one of these contracts are between $50 or higher. Right. So with us, $17 gives you all of them, and you have everything that you need in case you're interested in doing a lease option, or in case you're doing an option contract or wholesaling contract. Now, it's important to know that you will need two contracts, one with you and the seller, and then one with you as the seller with the person that you're assigning the contract with. And these contracts are two separate ones. One is a purchase and sales contract. The other one is the assignment of that contract, the assignment of the contract. And these contract details every one of those things, and it gives you where in the process you'll be using that particular contract. All right. So let me see something. I know we've spent a lot of time chatting. I want to take a minute. We started at 09, and it's 30 minutes in the call. I would like to take a little bit of time to answer all the questions that you may have about this or anything else. Make sure that I can answer any questions you have any kind of back and forth, whether it's about these contracts that we use, whether it's about the option, whether it's about the lease option, whatever questions you have. Let me take 10 minutes to address all the questions, answer anything that you have, and then we'll go from there, if that sounds good, right? So Hector, can you allow everybody opportunity to chat, to talk, so we can go through these things, and then maybe we can help exchange, get to know feedback and stuff like that. And also, again, I apologize. I am taking vacation away from the US. I'm in Africa now. So I hope that everybody heard my presentation. And if there's anything else that I need to go over, I'd be happy to do that. Feel free to turn on your camera so I can see you. You can see me if you want to. Feel free to open your mic so you can talk if you want to. You can also, you can use the chat, please. Augustine. So what questions may I answer? What questions can I answer about real estate in general or about this? Yes, so I did. So Tony, the contracts will tell you when to use them. So for example, the title will say, you know, the title for the lease option will say, this is when you sign the lease, and all of the different steps within it. And then the option contract will tell you this is between you and the seller. But it will also tell you when you find a person that you assign a contract, it will say this is an assignment contract, so that you know you're using this to transfer the contract that you have with the other party. And then we'll also add some description and explanation of each contract so that you know which one comes when. And of course, you can always reach out to us. I think everyone in here knows that I'm accessible. So if you have any questions within the process, you can reach out to us. We'll be happy to help answer whatever questions you have. But keep in mind, we're not selling legal services. So, but we can tell you, because these things are things that real estate agents are capable and competent to do when they have the appropriate training. So yes.